I know it's a slow sports weekend right now. No football. Officially the first Sunday without football. I guess, we had the Pro Bowl Grammy weekend there with our guy Fataport, but that was still the Super Bowl yet to come. Obviously now the NFL season's over, and NBA All-Star Weekend just happened as well too. So we don't have games till Thursday. So tomorrow, when you guys are listening to this, we're recording this Tuesday night. And at the time we're recording this as well too, I think ESPN's got Arkansas. Is it Arkansas, Texas A&M for college basketball? They have an unranked college basketball matchup. No NFL this week or at all anymore for the rest of the next couple of months, seasons, and no NBA right now in an unranked college basketball matchup. No Caitlin Clark as well. Nothing to watch. So they're rerunning the All-Star game on NBA TV. The All-Star game from this year, which I don't know if people enjoyed it in the moment, and they're rerunning it on NBA TV right now. I wish we could see the live numbers for how many people are watching the 2024 All-Star game rerun that took place this weekend. When they got to 200 points, I was like, okay, I think I've seen enough. I was not watching. I was like, okay, I think I can turn it off and just go home at this point. I think I've seen enough basketball. To be at almost 200 combined points, both teams at halftime for a game is pretty crazy. But the Dame Lillard thing this weekend I thought was kind of interesting because obviously Saturday night defends his title as the 3-point champion, won it last year, reigns again this year, and goes out and wins the All-Star MVP, All-Star game MVP. And I don't know what the actual stat line was for him this year. And I don't know what that means either, because we were just talking about the Bucks on the Friday pod about the season being in turmoil. And I don't know if Damian Lillard playing well in the All-Star game is necessarily like, is that a sign that the Bucks are going to turn things around? But it is interesting to be like, okay, what does Dame Lillard have in him as a player down the stretch of this season? Because Dame insignificant basketball, like we just haven't seen a lot of that recently. I know the playoff stuff has obviously been well documented. Me and Sam talked about it a lot when the trade had happened. I would like to even go and compare him and Holiday's playoff stats and starts and all that stuff. It's got to be. Holiday's got a ring as well too. I know as the guy behind Giannis, Dame leading the team, only been to one conference finals, and I think they got swept, so has never even won a game in the conference finals. Like all that stuff, we've laid all that stuff out, but just the last couple of seasons as well too for Dame in the 21-22 season, 0 games played after the All-Star break, and then last season only played 14 games before the Blazers shut him down. And then I guess the last 14 games he ever played for the Blazers after All-Star weekend last year. But like we said with the playoffs, only the one conference finals run, but that year where they made the conference finals run, that's the only year that they've advanced in the playoffs, or a team that Dame is on has advanced in the playoffs. In the previous 7 seasons, he's only advanced one time in the playoffs. So again, Dame Lillard stretch run, big time basketball, there just hasn't been a ton of it. And I think some of the numbers still for Dame this year have been good. I think he's, 26 points a game. The assists are, let's see what the Dame Lillard assists this year, 6.7, 24 points a game for Lillard. Career, near career low for field goal percentage at 42% this year. Yeah, third lowest of his career. You have to go back to his early years. And then the 3-point percentage is not as high, but career high for free throw percentage, or second best season for him personally for free throw percentage. But he's leading the league this year in free throw percentage. So obviously Dame still is a lethal shooter. He pulled up in the All-Star game rerun that we've got in the background. He just pulled up for a logo 3 on his way to winning the MVP. So obviously the man still got range. The shooting, the touch is still there. And, the playmaking and stuff, like the offensive numbers for Dame this year, while they've been up and down, they still have been good. And I know it's been a lot of the defense stuff. He's third right now still on FanDuel for that Clutch Player of the Year award. I know he was leading in odds for that for a long time. But again, just aesthetically with the Bucks this year, especially since Doc Rivers has moved over, I know some of the defensive stuff has improved. I know Windhorst was pointing that out on ESPN, but again, the record just it hasn't bared out. So it's like, okay, if the defense is getting better, but they're losing games, does it necessarily mean that this was a good move? But I don't want to say Dame was coasting through this first part of the season, but again, he's in his 30s. He's an older guard, smaller guy. He's 33, going to be 34 in July. So say this team was able to make the finals. That's going to be in June. So right after that, right after free agency, he's going to be 34. So, 34 in a couple of months heading into next season. If he's on the team, let's say they want to run this back one more year, 35 going into the finals for next year for Dame Lillard. And I don't want to say he was coasting through the initial part of the season, but I'm just going to be interested to see what Dame Lillard has in the tank for the Bucks here down the stretch. Because like we said, this is pivotal for this franchise, for this team right now, not just for can they win the title for this season, but this was really, I think, the last pod that me and Sam did was the first time where we were both kind of in agreement. Like, yeah, the Giannis thing, the clock is real now. And the flags have, like, we've like, you can go back and look. We check the tapes. We've been documenting the red flags as they have happened. But it's like, okay, the possibilities now where the roster is really it's at a tipping point here where it could go south really bad. And again, if Dame is able to pull this together for, and the Bucks are able to turn this around, Giannis, the numbers have been for him, like we pointed out on the Friday pod, have been fantastic, and he is having an MVP caliber season. So again, I'm not saying like, hey, Dame was coasting. Dame was like, I'm not we don't, it's hard to call out players for that kind of stuff. We can definitely speculate as guys just watching, but it's hard to definitively say and call out guys, obviously. So I'm just going to be interested to see what the numbers look like, if the shooting percentages go up, and if just the stretch run of the season, and once we get into the playoffs, if that stuff is able to turn around, we'll see if that happens. To have 82 games of coasting under your belt going into the playoffs is maybe not ideal. And especially for the thing is for Dame, it's like, okay, well, it's not like we have a deep playoff history with this guy to be like, okay, he is definitely, but yeah, the thing is, I guess he is kind of dependable. But like this guy's hit every big shot you want in a playoff game. So it's not, I guess, got to kind of, you got to take each one with a grain of salt. He never, like Sam has said too, he never played with an all NBA. There is angles obviously all the way around to the argument, but he showed that there is still something there. I don't think it means nothing to go out and win the All-Star Game MVP, but I guess it did. Well, when did Russ win the All-Star Game MVP? Should we look up the Russell Westbrook All-Star MVP real quick and see where that lines up with the path that his career has taken? Because Dame right now, it's like, okay, we need him to be a top, all NBA level guy in at least in the playoffs, like Jamal Murray thing, where we get that, yeah, Jamal Murray was not on the All-Star team this year, but we get this guy in a playoff series and he's fully healthy. He can be that quote unquote all NBA level guy. And that's what they need from Dame. So Russ right now is off the bench for the Clippers. And if Dame has a similar career path, then the trade is definitely going to be much more interesting than I think we thought. They definitely have the All-Star Game MVPs on Basketball Reference. 16 and 17? Oh, just 16. Oh, 15 and 16 for Russ. And yeah, he won the, okay, so he won the MVP the same year he won the All-Star Game MVP. Yeah. So I don't think it is the same thing necessarily for Dame Lillard, even though, yeah, the obviously after that, the Russ career thing happened. Dame a little farther along in his career at this point, but it doesn't mean nothing to go out there and win the All-Star. Maybe it does in the year when they score 200 points, but let's keep an eye on the Bucks. So as we said, they're definitely they've been at a crossroads all year, and the Doc thing definitely put a big, I don't know, how do you make a crossroads? What's a more extreme version of a crossroads? Just, it's a crossroads, but at like all of the edges are cliffs, and I don't know. There's something, there's just a more extreme version of the crossroads for the Milwaukee Bucks. But Yeah, overall, I think All-Star Weekend, the competitiveness level of All-Star Weekend, I don't think that, especially in this year too, when the league is really trying to pump the product, and really trying to say, hey, we got a media rights deal. I think when the thing with the media rights deal is when the number for it was projected really high, there was a lot of coverage about it and people were really pumped up. Obviously, there was a lot of talk, but the minute there was like a couple whispers of, maybe not the number it's like, okay, we really have, it's like, there hasn't been a ton new on what this potential new media rights deal could be. I think people are just kind of watching the season, seeing how all these new rules obviously affect how everything balances out. And to not have a competitive All-Star game, I mean, this is in line with what we've had, but to have it in this year, I think the league is probably obviously a little more extra upset about what we witnessed. But I think the highlight anyways, the one thing that everybody did unanimously like from the All-Star weekend was the Steph Sabrina shooting event. And I for everybody that said that was the best event, I mean, I totally agree. And that's why everybody's saying it just was straight up the best event. It was the most dramatic. It had also, the two highest level stars as well too. I guess is Sabrina. They have all WNBA. If I said that right, let's see if Sabrina was all WNBA last year. She was an all-star last year. Yeah, all the second team in 11th in MVP voting as well too. Got a one MVP vote for our gal Sabrina. So, obviously two very high level competitive, the greatest shooter of all time, and Sabrina Ionescu, who's shooting 40% from 40+%, like 45, I think, some percent from three this year. Or maybe I was looking at her college stats. Yeah, last season anyways, 44.8% for Sabrina Ionescu. And then, yeah, she goes out and she shoots an equal amount to what the other guys in the contest were shooting. Like, that was the crazy thing about the event, was the number that she put up and the number that Steph had put up. Like, the only person that she loses to on that night is the greatest shooter of all time. And I think maybe even one of the people on the broadcast might have said that as well too. But an incredible, just dramatic event. The way she starts too, did she make all the shots on her first two racks, or one miss through her first two racks? Maybe like 2 or 3 misses through her first 3. And really, well, you don't want to start breaking down the performance and all that. Like, it was an incredible performance by Sabrina, by Steph Curry, all the way around. Incredible drama. Like we said, everybody was, I think, on the edge of their seat for it. Steph, she put up an equal highest number of the night to what had already been put up. So it's like, okay, Steph actually has to go out there and put up his A game. Even if she goes out there and shoots a 22, a 21, a 22, that is still enough where it's like, okay, if Steph doesn't really have to, he can have like a B+, A- level performance and still go out there and win this thing. And no, it's like she went out there, demanded that he put up A+ shooting level numbers. And the rest of the 3-point contest itself too was a just dramatic 3-point contest. I think 4 or 5 of the guys all got 24+ points. I mean, 3 of them got 26. I know the 3 guys that advanced was Dame, Trae Young, and Karl Towns. And then Brunson had 25 and somebody else had 24, or Brunson had 24 and somebody else had 25. And, if you have 24 on your last shot and you hit the money ball shot, you're on 26 and you have 25 on the last shot. You hit the money, I don't remember if the 25 person hit the money ball shot to get to, was that Markkanen? I think, that was Markkanen that hit. I think, he hit the 25 shot on his last shot. So he would have been short anyways. But I mean, just in terms of the quality of performance, all these guys were putting up high numbers. They got the new 6-point ball. So if you hit both of those as well too, there's 12 extra points that you can get in the 3-point contest. I know that the numbers are a little bit different now if you're trying to compare everything historically, but in general, the 3-point contest, just all the way around, the WNBA and the NBA was definitely the best event of the evening. I know if you're trying to figure out how to fix the All-Star weekend, people have said to switch the events around and maybe finish with the 3-point contest pause. I maybe try that. I mean, at this point, it's like you might as well try anything. But I think when the dunk contest is at its best, it is a closing level event where the thing, I mean, 2016, obviously, with Gordon and Levine is the obvious example of this. And it's probably not fair as well, too, to compare everything to the 2016 three dunk contest. I mean, that is obviously one of the best, if not the best, dunk contests of all time. So it's not like, okay, every dunk contest can't be the dunk contest of all time. But even some of those early 2000 dunk contests, you get guys like Jason Richardson in there. It's still, I think, the peak version of that, dunking as a skill, all that stuff. If that's the closing event of the evening and you can find a way to make the dunk contest work, I still think that that is a fine order of events. But making the dunk contest work at this point, I don't want to say it feels impossible, but the problem is, so everybody, I mean, not everybody, but Stephen A, I know on First Take was saying that, and a lot of people have made this point where when LeBron chose to never do the dunk contest, that was kind of the undoing of the dunk contest. And ever since then, the guys in the league felt like they never needed to respect it, blah, 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 blah. Ever since then, the dunk contest has just continued to fall apart. But really, those early years of the dunk contest were just unique. And I know everybody's like, oh, back in the day, Jordan was in the dunk contest and Dominique was in the dunk contest and all this stuff. But it's like, okay, that was one era of guys where I think that was just kind of a special run where the dunk contest, you have the dunk contest, it starts in 84. And MJ is a rookie at that point. I don't think he's in that one. Larry Nance ends up winning that one. But you got Dominique. I think Clyde is still in there. And even an older Dr. J. I think they even get Dr. J for his last 2 or 3 NBA seasons in the dunk contest. So, in terms of name value, I mean, it's Dr. J, obviously. But in terms of a star level player, you're still getting him in the dunk contest. But Jordan as well, too, 85. I think he does it 3 times. Maybe 85, 80. I don't have the list pulled up in front of me. I guess we can pull it up really quick to double check to get the numbers right. Definitely no harm. IT keeping me on my toes, telling me to double check the facts here. So we've got the dunk contest in 84 with Nance at number 1. Jordan wins it in 86 and 87. And I think, 85 was when Neek was got it in Indy. And I guess if you want to include the couple of ABA years, the 76, the Dr. J one, you got to include as the original iconic dunk contest. And then looks like they ran it back in 77 as well, too. And Neek beat Jordan in the finals in the 85 dunk contest. And then Jordan in, 87, 88, back to back. Spud Webb, all due respect to our guy Spud Webb, wins the dunk contest over Dominique in 1986. No Michael Jordan. I think that was the year he was hurt and was not able to participate. But really, outside of that early year, first 4 runs where you have MJ, Dominique, Clyde, and the older Dr. J all in it at one time, they're really there have been big names that have done it, but they've only done it one time and they've all done it really young. And they've never really done it when they've been like in all-star either, too, if that makes sense. Because so after the 88, Jordan wins in 88. You've got Dominique shows up in 90 and I think wins it again as well, too. And I guess we can double check that. Wins it, again in 1990 over Kenny Smith. A close one in the finals. 145 total score for Kenny Smith to 146 for our guy, Dominique Wilkins. But you got Scottie Pippen in that one as well, too. But that was the first time he was ever an all-star, the only time he ever appears. Sean Kemp was in the dunk contest 4 times, but only once as an all-star. Kobe and Ray Allen both did it as rookies, both very early on. Vince Carter in his second season. Amari did it twice, but once as an all-star. Blake Griffin did it in his rookie season. He was hurt for that first year, but the rookie season that he played, that's the year he was in the dunk contest. Paul George did it once as an all-star. Lillard in his second season. Giannis in his second season. And then Spida Mitchell as well, too, did it very early on in his career. So really the only big stars that have done it and been at like the peak of their powers while they're doing it have been in like multiple. I mean, you got the Jordan, Dominique, and then Clyde back in the early days, and then Dwight doing the dunk contest and like, when those early Orlando Magic days. And then I think he returns as well too in 2020 and does it again. But when Dwight was doing it, I mean, that was when he was the best center in the league at that point. And 08, 09 when he loses to Nate Robinson, 08, I mean, he's taking the Magic to the finals over LeBron at that point. I guess he's, he only did it twice with the Magic at the peak of his powers. That third time was, like I said, with the Lakers. So it's not like Wade did the dunk contest 4 times. No, it's not like all of these other guys have been doing the dunk contest. And you could say, well, yeah, LeBron never did it. These guys never followed LeBron. But even going back through, like Kobe, it's not like, Kobe was a avid dunk contest guy. Like these guys were in, like, I'm a shout out to Kobe for doing it. It's one of the early iconic things that put him on the map and helped elevate him into that person that, and iconic basketball figure that he became. It definitely added to the mystique. And again, it's a good thing that he did it, but I think it's hard to criticize guys for taking the dunk contest seriously, because historically not a ton of guys, like especially on the all NBA level, have done it. It's just, like we're saying, Blake Griffin wasn't doing it when he was at the peak of his powers in the Clippers, and he was at a different point in his career as well. Athletically too, there was some injuries that came into play. So I know like Ja Morant and Zion, 2 incredible athletes that a lot of people want to see in the dunk contest. It's okay. Maybe they should have done it in their first or second year. We give them credit. But if all of these other star players are only setting like a 2-year window as well too, like Zion's not going to do the dunk contest in his first 2 years, because he wasn't, even getting on the court consistently at that point as well too. And it's just, I think it's hard to criticize guys for not participating in it. And I don't know if they're not participating in it because they don't take it seriously, or because if honestly, I feel like the guys are just scared of the creativity at this point. The amount of dunks that, not just in the dunk contest too, but dunks that have been seen, because that's the other thing about the dunk contest back in the day was for a mass audience. A lot of times this was, or just, in general too, it's not just to say, it's math to say that the amount of dunks that people are watching now is probably higher than the amount of dunks that people were watching 20, 30, even probably 15 years ago. So the exposure to this stuff, like that, one of the reasons that 2016 contest is so creative is because is so great because it was so creative. And Aaron Gordon brought out the mascot. The mascot's on their hoverboard. You've got Zach LaVine is jumping from the free throw line. That's, obviously old fashioned, traditional, goes way back to Dr. J in that first dunk contest, but also mixing it up as well too, and doing the between the legs, throwing in, I think there was like a behind the back in there as well, and copied the Aaron Gordon dunk a little bit. Like he had the one self lob that was really similar to the rotating mascot dunk, but that self lob dunk was still kind of a unique dunk in its own right. I know we had just seen it in that contest, but historically it was like, okay, we're definitely watching something special here. So the dunk contest we watched Saturday night, the real one dunk that was like, okay, this is a highlight. This will a compilation level dunk, if that's the right way to phrase it, in the what are the best dunks in dunk contest history. The only dunk that is really has a case, I think, to make it in there is the first dunk that Mac McClung did, where he jumps over the guy, grabs the ball, and then drops it and like catches it again, puts it back up and dunks it. And he had another one too where he jumped over a guy or something that was pretty cool. But again, that didn't stick out like the first one that he did, because the creativity on that one was good. And again, that one was truly unique. So I think really if they want to save the dunk contest, there needs to be a way to say we have access to a lot of like a good library of dunks. It's like somebody needs to have some coach just needs to be, or some player needs to crowdsource dunks from fans and be like, hey, if you have an idea, DM me a video. whatever. Like there just needs to be a way where or some ideas where players feel like, they can be a little more creative with figuring out these dunks. Cause I don't think you can rely on getting Giannis now in the dunk contest and Ja Morant now. Historically, you're getting the younger stars or maybe somebody who is on the border of being like a all NBA level type guy. I mean, you did have a younger star this year with Jaime Jaquez and Jaylen Brown in the dunk contest. So in terms of names, and Mac McClung was the defending champ, so he had to he had to be back, just to defend his belt. So in terms of names, I think that's 3 spots right there. I think they did about as good as you can do. Maybe if they had one more spot instead of a Toppin, Jake Top, is Jacob Toppin the right name? Do people call him Jake Toppin? Maybe if that player's a little bit more name value, then people would look at the roster a little bit better. But again, they got, Jaquez has been like the 3rd best rookie all season, and Jaylen Brown is all NBA last year and in the mix again to be in that position again this season. So I think it's there needs to be some sort of brainstorming session available to these NBA players so that they can feel comfortable going into the dunk contest and we can have a good time on All-Star Saturday night. But really for the All-Star Saturday, like I get it. Some of the events were a little lackluster. The competitiveness for the game was not bad, but, not that great. Not probably not ideal when you're trying to sell your product to all of these sports leagues, even though you're buying the regular season. And at the end of the day, they're probably going to be fine. And, for a Saturday night where there's really nothing else on, there's no college football at this point. College basketball, like we said, is going through its whole thing. I had no problem throwing it on in the background. And, I think especially now where if you're a kid and you're just like, okay, this is my thing for the next 3 hours, I have to watch this, then maybe it's not the best event, but you're not even doing that anymore now as well, too, because you have your phone. So in general, as a background event, the All-Star game can do that just fine. You can definitely throw it on in the background and it can work. And that's not, I don't think, a bad thing for TV right now, because again, that's how a lot of people are consuming TV. So to have these events on in the background on a Saturday night, I think it does. All-Star Weekend still works, is what I'm trying to say. I still like the idea of it. I still think that there is a way to make all this stuff function, but definitely needs to be workshopped a little bit to help fix some of the stuff. But again, the WNBA NBA crossover was amazing. So maybe that's the thing. Just, do we need more WNBA NBA crossover events? Because I guess you could do it in the 3-point challenge. You could also do it in the skills challenge as well too. The dunk contest. I don't know if you want to start like lowering the rim and doing stuff. Like I don't know what you want to do there, but I think you can definitely maybe even create another contest or two. Maybe that's the way to do it. Because really there's, like, if we're just being honest, there's a pride on the line in an event like that is not on the, it is not on the line right now in the rest of the All-Star events. So, that's probably, again, why that 3-point event was so good, because there was more stakes than just the event itself. There was, people were going to talk about it. There was going to be narratives if certain things had happened. And yeah, on the All-Star rerun as well too, the East had just hit 200 points for the game. Dame Lillard just somebody just hit a 3. Like I said, when they hit 200 points, I shut it off and I didn't see it just now on the rerun. But somebody hit another 3. The East is at 203 points. Halliburton's about to make it. Slam dunk, 205 with a minute left. Just crazy. 205 to 180 with a minute left is just wild. But maybe more crossover events is the key to All-Star Weekend. At this point, try anything. If they announce something new for All-Star Weekend, unless obviously it's just a terrible idea, I'm going to be a fan of it. That's my take. Unless it's a bad idea, I'm a fan. Just try something new at this point. If you're willing to take a chance, maybe even if it is a bad idea, I'll give it a shot, because if you're just willing to take a chance, it is worth anything at this point. The half court shooting as well too. For me, I like the half court shooting. I like watching it. Do we need like full court and 3-court shooting? It could get slow after a while if they start missing. I feel like should the guys be better at half court shots? Maybe a minute. What did the or the Trae Young's team take? They took like a minute to hit the shots. For 3 guys, I mean, a minute for one guy, that's obviously not too bad, especially if you have a rebounder or like a bin and you can just continuously shoot. But for 3 guys in a minute, so that's 3 minutes to, I don't know. I feel like maybe you can hit a half court shot. I feel like maybe the league half court shooting percentage should be a notch higher, especially now too. The range, everybody's shooting, everybody's got range. But there is a couple other NBA notes quick that I wanted to wrap up on for the NBA anyways. And I know we talked a little bit about the LeBron trade rumors to the Warriors with Sam on the Friday pod. And that storyline in general, it kind of came and went, paused. Like the Warriors were the ones as well too that reached out to the Lakers. It's not like the Lakers were, as far as we know, it's not like the Lakers were sniffing around or the LeBron camp were sniffing around to see what was out there. Again, publicly, as far as we know, that's what was going on. But the more I think about that possibility, like one, just him to the Warriors, if he ever were to leave the Lakers, there would be, why would he leave the Lakers? Well, okay, well, he would leave the Lakers to go play with Bronny. Is Bronny on the Warriors, or are the Warriors like going to try to go really get Bronny? Because I know there was a report as well too that said that they were not done pursuing LeBron. Like they were, I don't remember word for word what it was, but that in the summer, they were definitely going to revisit the possibility of trying to bring LeBron back, or, revisit the possibility of seeing if he's available to trade. So that's another reason why I definitely was still thinking about it. But it's like, okay, does that report mean the Lakers or the Warriors are going to go out and get Bronny and make an effort to go get Bronny? It's like, well, now I have to go to the Warriors and play with Steph because they got my kid. Or are they going to try to, barter an actual trade, get a deal done, swing something to get LeBron over there? And the Klay Thompson name is the name that was floated around. And, he goes back to the Lakers, or not back to the Lakers, but the Thompson name anyways goes back to the Lakers. His dad played there, was drafted number 1 overall. Again, we're young kids here on the Rem and Sam pod. We don't remember all the history stuff, but I think, very high draft pick by the Lakers, played there, and would be able to, I guess you don't want to say finish his career because you never know, but would be able at least anyways have a run on the team, Klay Thompson on the team that his dad played on. But again, the way Podziemski has been playing lately and the way Kuminga has been playing this season, if you're the Lakers, I'm not saying that Kuminga for LeBron is equal value. And I'm not even necessarily saying that the Warriors would be like, oh, well, yeah, we're doing that trade 100 times out of 100. Like, call that in. Maybe they really are only willing to do Klay or Wiggins too. I'm sure, Wiggins for LeBron is, if you're trying to win a title, you gotta do what you gotta do. But if you're the Lakers anyways, and it will, I think LeBron wants to see where this season is going to go with this team. They made the conference finals last year. Austin Reeves, he's on a favorable contract. The Russell piece as well too, especially around the trade deadline this year, looking back a little bit, he was, and we've been an all-star break. It's not like having games or anything, but Russell was starting to play better. And when he was playing, and when it's like, okay, if he's shooting well, then those conference finals expectations, we can kind of start to see those, which maybe, and I think that kind of shows you where if LeBron were to make a big picture decision to leave the Lakers, it would be because they would be in that position where we need a D'Angelo Russell to be heat checking threes to make a deep playoff run. I love Russell, but if you can go to a team where it's like we need Curry to be doing that, then obviously it's a bigger move. So if you're the Lakers, you would still have Davis. I know LeBron leaving Davis as well too. Sam says that time and time again. That's the piece that Sam always reminds me of, that I have to be like, okay, he is probably not going to leave Davis in Los Angeles. He's probably not just going to leave him stranded there. Maybe if there was a side thing worked out for him, then something else would become more available. But again, just in theory, just putting thinking caps on and thinking about building out a basketball roster. If you're the Lakers and Podziemski and Kuminga were on the table for LeBron, it'd be interesting. And I'm not saying you would do it. I'm not even saying you would do it at this past trade deadline. And maybe looking back, you go, oh, the Podziemski rise. Maybe that, who knows? I think keeping LeBron is 10 times out of 10 right now the safe thing to do. But I'm just saying that in the summer, those two guys, if they continue to play well and there was a pick or two in there and something, if whatever the rest of that package would look like, it would be an interesting conversation to sit down and go, we could put those two guys, or even if it was, Kuminga, if you could say, hey, we could have Kuminga and Reeves and Davis, that would be an interesting in whatever else the package is. And I'm saying, if it's Podziemski and Kuminga and Reeves and Davis and, whatever else the moving parts are there, those would be two really interesting young guys where, again, I get that the Clay contract number, especially this past trade deadline as an expiring contract, would have made a lot more sense. But if they're trying to revisit this in the summer and say, hey, it's a Clay sign and trade, that's a possibility. But those young guys, if you're the Lakers, obviously those are the two guys you're one. So that's where I would be looking at. If the Warriors want to revisit that, are they revisiting it with, are those guys on the table? And if you're the Lakers and those guys are on the table, the LeBron thing, I think, opens up a little bit more than it would have been in the past. I'm just saying, like, the door just creaks open just like a little tiny bit. It's now, it's still LeBron. You still probably at the end of the day, we're leaning on keeping him around. But I'm just saying, you have to keep in mind with those two guys. And of course, we have to steal at least one topic again from First Take. Shout out to Stephen A. Call in, Molly. Call in if you have a problem with us stealing topics from the show. But we're recording this Tuesday night. I know. I'm sure you guys know we're recording this Tuesday night because you're probably also watching the All-Star Game rerun on NBA TV on Tuesday night. But they were talking today on First Take about the scoring boom that has happened in the NBA. And, a lot of people have been talking about the scoring boom. There's been a lot of conversation about why that has happened and what has been the cause of it. Is it the rules? Is it the defense that is being played? Like, is it the effort? Is it the fact that nobody's trying? Is it the fact that the way the league is officiating these games now, is it making it harder to play defense? Like, is it defense? Like, why is the scoring boom happening? And I think, for one, I think the answer is probably all those things. That's usually the right answer for some stuff. It's a slow burn over time. You go back in the stats and you go, oh, 10 years ago, the scoring number was this, and now the number is this. And it's like, okay, I feel like scoring the last couple of years it's been like inflation. It's been like numbers. It's hard to look at it and be like, oh, gas prices and all that stuff. And, with economies, it's like, okay, the prices are going up, but our wages going up as well. I get all that stuff. But what I'm saying is, in comparison, looking back, and it's maybe the comparison would be like in dramatic examples, like looking way back 75, 100 years ago and looking at prices from there, where it's like, okay, obviously the prices are going to move up a little bit. Like the scoring, you're going to change the rules. The money's going to, like, there's going to be a slow matriculation of all these things that is going to cause the scoring to increase. But there's also, and we've talked about this a lot, but there is just a lot of good guys in the league. The offensive talent in the league is really talented right now. And Stephen A made this point I think he was making this point in terms of, what he was saying was the offensive talent, that buckets equal money right now in the NBA. If you score points, you're going to get paid. That's how guys at least are thinking. And that's what the mindset is. So what he was saying was defense is not becoming a priority. But if that's how you're developing and that's how every player is training now with the priority on, emphasis on offense, but it's not just that every player has an emphasis on offense. It's that every player has an emphasis on shooting. And if you are shooting and constantly, even if it's just spot up shooting, if everybody's spot up is shooting is better, then you're going to you're going to branch off and do a little bit more and expand a little bit more. You're going to be capable of at least a couple more shots than you were before. So again, the talent level of the guys is just increasing, and the players' ability to score is getting better. So of course the scoring is going up, and you're having more and more good offensive players on the same team. So again, I get that, even especially right now in the regular season, because that's another factor too. The regular season, the effort levels in that compared to the playoffs could definitely be a leading factor as well. Obviously, in conjunction with the rules and the spacing. I know Reddick was saying, hey, there's more spacing now. It's harder to guard guys. Like, it is just harder to play defense because the spacing, the skills, all of these things are affecting the scoring boom. But I don't think that people were trying to necessarily fix the scoring boom, but it's like, do we need to get defense back in the game somehow? And again, I don't necessarily know if we've been seeing worse basketball, like a worse product this year. And we're not talking about the All-Star game right now. We're talking about the regular season. And I'm a degenerate basketball fan, so I'm probably the wrong guy to be saying that, hey, the basketball's all been good. Because again, I'm saying that I don't mind necessarily watching the All-Star game on a Saturday night, just chilling on in the background. So all these games are I'm having a good time watching basketball just in general. But yeah, I mean, in terms of watching a quality product, I don't know if the quality of the product has been necessarily less this regular season. Again, the talent level in the league is at an all-time high. So you're just turning on any game, and there's going to be two guys on each team that are going to be able to get 20. There's going to be multiple guys on each team that are going to be fun to watch, and guys that are interesting and things that are just fun to tune into. So the talent level in the league is deeper. And if you're trying to figure out a way to I don't want to, again, call it decreasing scoring, but if you're trying to, like, people are phrasing it as bringing defense back, but I don't necessarily know if it's bringing defense back, or again, if it is just decreasing scoring. But the real way to fix this, as the more I've thought about it, I think is just expansion and just having another expansion team. And I know the expansion storyline has been floated out there, and that Silver as well too has been very open now recently about that is very real, and that is definitely something that the NBA is going to be pursuing after the media rights deal. But until the talent is, especially up until then, is just going to keep continually, in theory anyways, piling up on these teams. And I think until you spread it out, then the scoring will go back down at that point. Spread the talent out. And I think I don't think that bringing defense back, and I get what people are saying by saying bringing defense back as an emphasis, but I don't think necessarily scoring is up because defense is down. I think defense is, I don't know, maybe we need to go back and watch a little more 80s basketball and figure it out. Well, we've got some Joe Montana games in the queue right now for, again, the Patrick Mahomes conversation, like we've been talking about in the last couple of pods. So we'll definitely continue to stockpile 80s basketball so we can talk about and compare the defense of the eras specifically. I don't know why I'm singling out the 80s, but it just, that feels, the 80s and the 90s. I think the 60s, watch the 60s and the 70s basketball for the pure entertainment value. But I don't know if, I think we can understand the era separation amongst those guys. I mean, you don't have a 3-point line. It's just going to be a different style of game. And the 80s as well too is people at least knowing, kids growing up at least knowing about the 3-point line a little bit. Like, it's not like, like we're saying now, at least now kids are growing up being like, you have to shoot the three, versus you've got kids in the 70s growing up no 3-point line at all. And then the 80s, it's like, okay, it's there, you can use it. And so in terms of comparing the defensive eras, I think that's maybe why we'll stick with the 80s. But I don't think it's a hot take to say that scoring will go down once, like in terms of points per game per team, once expansion hits, because it is going to dilute the talent a little bit. The talent's just so insane by the time we get to that point, which is, I know people aren't a fan of this next draft, but definitely a real possibility. We have a lot of stock in our boy Matisse and our guy Ron Holland. I mean, we got stock in Bronny. We do have stock in a lot of guys from the 2024 class, and obviously it goes beyond that as well too. But again, I don't know if defense is even a problem right now. I just think offense and offensive skill set is at an all-time high, and it's showing up in the numbers. And I think until there's a way that there's just less good, until there's less good people on each team, the numbers are going to continue to go up for the stuff, and things are going to continue to improve. And yeah, the officiating stuff, maybe there is definitely things that they can do to figure it out. But if you're going to start you can throw in rule changes to dramatically try to shift the game back to defense, but you have to pick you're just switching over to a different style at that point. And you kind of are, it's like, do you want to change the game, or do you want to add something else around the game that would affect it? Because again, expansion is not necessarily on the court, if that makes sense. Just all-star weekend something while we were watching a 200-point. I guess that one, like I said, was thinking about it because they were talking about it on First Take today. But I just don't think that I guess I don't think either that the league is going to do rule changes either as well too. But we'll see what happens in the coming weeks with that. Maybe they will. Who knows? But that was probably too much on All-Star Weekend anyways. But that was the only basketball we had on this week. So it is what it is. That's all from the NBA world that we had to talk about anyways. Shout out again to Sabrina for clutching up and giving us the best event of All-Star Weekend. Shout out to Steph as well too for clutching up and representing for the boards, pulling out the win. But there was one other event that happened this weekend as well too. UFC 298, Volkanovski versus Topuria, and our guy Volk goes down, loses the belt, because that was the thing about this loss too that stung more than the Islam losses. The first Islam loss stung because I think it was so close, and a lot of people that have watched that fight, both, and the champ as well, we watched that fight in the moment, going back and rewatching it. It's a close fight, and it's a credit to both those guys to say that as well too. It's a high level fight. It stings because Volk had such a good shot in that one, and then it stings in the second one because he gets punched he gets knocked out by Islam so quick, gets dominated, and it's kind of like, okay, I don't want to say it sours that first performance at all, but the fact that the rematch wasn't as close as the way the first one, and dramatic as the first one was, definitely like, okay, Islam, at least right now anyways, is at the peak of his powers. But Volk now officially loses his belt, and shout out to Topuria for, I think, a lot of the smart fighting people as well too, because I think like Topuria, this was my first big exposure to him. I think there's been some fight night stuff that's been worked in there as well too, but this will be like the first time where it's like, oh yeah, I definitely remember that Topuria fight. It stands out. And I think obviously a lot of the people that were locked in, the odds for this one were close as well too. So I don't think it's surprising. Like, it is an upset. He takes down the reigning champ. It's a shout out, but it's this, and I'm saying this is a credit to Topuria, where it's not necessarily surprising that he took down Volk. Like, a lot of smart fighting people knew of his ability and thought that he had a really good shot in this one. His power as well too, I think people definitely saw on display with the shot that he knocked down on Volkanovski. But it's not that Volkanovski just lost his belt. It's the whole kind of era that the UFC was just in has now kind of officially shifted, because if you go back to 2019, and this is kind of too, like, for me at least anyways, so this is a little bit personal as well too, not necessarily just the history of the UFC, but in like that 2018, 2019, but in the 2019 year, you've got Usman in March wins at UFC 235, takes the belt. He has his belt for over 1,000 days until, obviously the infamous Leon Edwards shot. But Izzy at UFC 243 in October takes his belt. He has it for 1,000 days plus. And Volk in December 2019 takes his belt at 240 UFC 245, and he holds his belt for, I think, 1,500 plus days. Might even have gone to like 1,900 at some point by the end of it there. Because again, his belt wasn't on the line in those Islam's fight, just Islam's belt. So, again, shout out to Islam for stepping up, and then again winning both those fights in a clean sweep against Volkanovski. Definitely proves why John Jones is hurt, but he's number one on the pound for pound ranking right now. But hey, 5 years ago for the UFC, you have these three huge superstars all emerge, and they had already been on the scene. A lot of people, had known, like Stylebender, the nickname. A lot of people had known that this guy was on the rise. Same with Usman, the wrestling. But for all these guys to dominate the way they did for up until the last year or so, but for those guys to become such big stars that they were, and this is especially too right after Conor McGregor kind of vaults the UFC into that next into that mainstream popularity, because he has the event against Khabib, UFC 229, which is still like it's the biggest UFC fight, I believe, of all time. I don't think it's the biggest pay-per-view match of all time. I think the McGregor Mayweather fight, the boxing match, might be the number one pay-per-view fight of all time. Slide in the DMs if you want to fact check, but he has that. That's the big fight that really breaks the UFC in 2018, him and Khabib. And then again, the year after that, I mean, in March, Usman gets the belt, Izzy follows, and then Volk after that. And then December 2019 as well, Nunes becomes the double champ. She had already won her first belt, I think, going back to like 2016. But in 19, she becomes the double champ. So 4 big UFC stars are all entering or kind of at the peak of their powers like 5 years ago. And now Volk has lost the belt. And I'm just going to be curious to see where the UFC goes from here. Because I don't want to say that, Volk going down the stars being out, like the UFC is in a bad spot. Like, I think it'll be interesting to see where the sport develops. And I think too, like the name, like Topuria has more Instagram followers on Instagram than Volkanovski does, even before he beat him in the fight. So there is some international stuff for the UFC that I think is very promising, and maybe even more promising than in the USA. But the USA stuff is, it'll be interesting to see where the big names are going to emerge now for the stars in the UFC. I know, Leon Edwards is in there. So is Sean O'Malley. But I'm just saying, those were some big stars for the UFC. And really the group of guys, and to have a, four guys, one girl, shout out Nunes, but just to use the term guy generically, like to have 4 guys like that are all, again, just such incredible fighters and all in their own right, like generational talents and very unique. Adesanya, with his length and just the way he's able to just gracefully maneuver around the court. Usman, his wrestling, and just Volk, the overall technical mastery. And even in this fight against Topuria, there were some moments where you're like, okay, Volk is definitely still right there. And I know, I don't his record and all that stuff, like he's still quote unquote at his peak, but they're just to have a depth of, to have a full roster like that as the UFC, to have as all of them such big stars. It is, I mean, it is, the NFL had a kind of thing where you have like Brady and Manning and Rodgers and all of these star quarterbacks at one time. And you go, oh, what's going to happen when they retire and what happens? And then, you get Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow, Herbert, Anthony Richardson. Like you have, guys in this year's draft as well too. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. Like maybe all these guys are stars. Like you end up with all these amazing players. But that is the thing about the other sports, is all of the players that are up next have like all gotten better. And I know there is legacy stuff where not every new player is better than the player before, but like just, you go for NFL for quarterbacks, you go Unitas to Staubach to Montana to Brady to Mahomes. where, Mahomes now, he's already in the GOAT conversation, but there is a thing with Mahomes where part of the reason he's in that GOAT conversation is because what he can do on the field precedes what all of the guys can do him before. And it's like, okay, now he just needs the resume to be able to catch up to these guys. But we understand that Mahomes can do things that Montana and Unitas, hey, shout out to Staubach. Maybe Staubach keep up with Mahomes better than all these guys. But, Brady, just the mobility, all that stuff, like Mahomes just has an extra gear. And for the NBA, you go Russell back in the day, and maybe the NBA, these guys could hang cross-generationally, if that's a term, a little bit better. But you go Russell to Kareem to MJ, Kareem and MJ aren't the same type of player, but just in terms of what stars are doing, and MJ, the marketability and what he propels the league into, and you have Magic and Bird, and then LeBron. And now we're at a point with Wembanyama where, obviously Wembanyama is my guy, but just peak Wembanyama was the best, if not, 1, 2, 3 best prospect of all time for NBA. And it's like, okay, whatever the peak version of Wembanyama is, that player is, I'm not just going to sit here and say, oh, peak Wemby is the best player of all time, but you get what I'm saying. The skill set that Wemby has is just unique and precedes what a guy like Bill Russell was doing back in the day. And I'm not saying Bill Russell probably has a better chance of hanging with Wembanyama one-on-one than, Unitas does with Mahomes. I don't know that you put Unitas around a good offensive line. You have a hard time, again, comparing. This is why they say comparing eras is hard, but there has been a progression for these other sports from athlete to athlete, generation to generation. And the UFC now, again, the generations have changed over. And I'm just curious, and I'll say, obviously excited as well, too, to see who the next guys are that not just emerge as the top guys and the champions, but who are the next guys that emerge as like the generational talent. And that's a tough thing to say, like, oh, let's keep an eye out for the next generational talent. That's another thing they were doing on First Take as well today was who's going to be the face of the league without LeBron. And it's a hard conversation to have. It's tough pressure to, just throw on a bunch of people. And you just want to let guys fight, let the guys do their thing, and then whatever happens. But I'm just, looking at the landscape, I think it's going to be interesting to see who emerges as that best guy. Because the reason I say that is because, the NFL, we go Brady to Mahomes just right away, where Brady and Mahomes are even playing each other. And Brady got the best of him twice in the playoffs and in the big moments. But it just right away, the transition to overlap. And again, I'm not saying Wemby is just destined to be the next best player of all time, but the skill set of a guy like Wemby to overlap with the greatness of a guy like LeBron, I'm just saying that transition is seamless. So we have these generational star UFC guys going down, and it's like, okay, it's time for it. If these other sports have had it happen, maybe the UFC will have that happen as well too. So it's just like these upcoming fights with these stars and these new champions, these are all going to be exciting. Because Topuria, like we just said, he was 14 or 15-0 in his professional fighting career. And I know that some of that stuff I'm not always clear too, is that with like the UFC record, I don't think that's just like, or the record that they show on the UFC graphic. It's not like just his UFC record. I think that could branch out across a bunch of fighting things. So, he's super early on in his fighting career. He definitely has a chance to emerge. But that's what I'm saying. I'm just, now that the transition has flipped over, guys are going to be emerged. So I don't want to sound like I started that being like doomsday on the UFC that now all the old champs are out, because, I get nostalgic too. Like I said, this is when these old champs were, and I'm saying old champs with all due respect. I'm just throwing the term around loosely, but like Nunez and Volk, and these are the people that were introduced and again, brought the UFC into the mainstream, got on I think probably, got on ESPN Plus over this time, really sort of brought it into the fold that it has today. But yeah, Topuria has been fantastic. Pereira right now, Pereira might be the most, I don't want to say famous active UFC fighter, but he's headlining UFC 300, and the UFC probably wanted that just as much as he did. And the leg kick thing that he's been doing to guys, and now that we've seen sort of, we saw it in this last card, the effects of that leg kick, and I don't want to credit that to him because I'm just not don't have the overall fighting knowledge to be like, oh yeah, that's Topuria that started that. But and just from what I've seen, his leg kick is maybe the most vicious of all of them, and it's his dominance was before these other guys. So his skill set, I know Suga Sean in terms of the popularity, and again, his skill set as well too. I think Merab versus Suga Sean, if we ever head to that, and Merab fought on this UFC 298 card as well too against Cejudo, the way that Merab put it on Cejudo, pause, I think is, and you could see the way Suga was collected in that fight. That like Suga's my guy. Like I'm not gonna ever doubt him, bet against him. Like I'm not gonna do that to my guy. But that is a tough fight. The conditioning thing for Merab is crazy. There was like a post that was said that like he fought a full fight in the locker room before the fight, and then went out and he did 5 rounds in the locker room, pause, before the fight, and then went out and did 5 more during the fight, or 3 more against Cejudo, or maybe he did 3 by 5, 3 5-minute rounds in the locker room, and then 3 rounds on the fought it all 3 rounds in the ring, and then to pick up Cejudo too, slam him to the ground, and you don't dominate Cejudo the way that Merab did it. And I get Cejudo's been around for a minute, but that is a tough fight too. And fights like that are interesting when you have not just contrasting styles, but contrasting body types as well too, where you have Merab is more compacted, and Suga Sean obviously has the reach and the power that has been the thing for him. And Merab has it, Merab has the power as well, the power as well too in his game. But I'm just saying that's a brutal fight. I would be if we get to that fight, because I know Suga has a match against Cheetah Vera, I believe, on the books as well too. That might even be the next upcoming fight. Let's see what the next one is. So I'm not just saying that Sean O'Malley, Suga Sean just gonna walk through Cheeto Vera. Oh no, we got Moreno Royale on a fight night next Saturday. So free fight on ESPN. If you're listening to this, go check out the Moreno Royale fight night. Moreno obviously lost the belt to Pantasia, but a champion level fighter fighting for free on ESPN. You got to check that out. But yeah, the next pay-per-view anyways, the UFC 299 is O'Malley versus Cheeto Vera number 2 in Miami. And then we get UFC 300 Pereira versus Hill, which I do think that's the fight I would want to see right now. Active fighters, if John Jones is hurt at UFC 200, Pereira versus Hill is the right match. And I think there was probably, if they were waiting this long, my guess is just they're making sure that everybody's healthy and ready to go and get everything squared away. But yeah, we get that April 13th in Las Vegas. But that Merab, if we get a Merab Suga fight, that would be a brutal fight for both of those guys. And then the other fight that was really interesting off that card was and really competitive off that card as well too. It went to the judges' scorecard, was the Whitaker versus Paulo Costa fight. And I love Paulo Costa. I like Whitaker too as well too. A former champion. All do like tons of respect for his game. He's an incredible fighter, but Costa is just one of my guys. And again with the kick game, I don't know if this is just going to be the new thing in the UFC now, where the leg kick is just going to, and I'd have to go back and watch some of the old stuff and be like, hey, is the leg kick definitely more prominent now? But at least for Costa anyways, I went back and watched the Rockhold fight, which is the last fight he had. The leg kick in this Whitaker fight was much more dangerous. And Costa ended up losing on the judges' scorecard, but he's a top 10 guy in the class right now. And he's one of those guys where, you have your guys where it's like, okay, if we were doing, we can have there's the fighter rankings, and then, it's like for the NBA, you have your rankings and then your confidence rankings, and then you can have all the way you can rank these guys. And I feel like there was like a Rodney Dangerfield, no respect for Paulo Costa's fighting game. And maybe more technical people were pointing out stuff that was like, okay, maybe there's definitely stuff there. But I thought in this Whitaker fight, again, against a former champion, to go 3 rounds, go the distance, to at moments like the head kick at the end of the first round, he almost knocked him out and almost got him down, almost beat the former champ. So I really like, again, Costa has been one of my guys, but I really respect his game way more now, especially his improvement over this break and the break as well too. There was some stuff with the fights that they kept getting scheduled and canceled, and he was going in and out of cards. And it's like, okay, at some point, there's an injury as well there too. So you definitely get that, but it's just, you want to see a guy fight. Like we're saying, this is our guy. So we want to see him out there in the ring. And I think they said it was 18 months. And for him to take that time off and then to be back and be, I think for him, just a much better fighter than he was before is like, okay, that was time well spent. Definitely worth it. And again, an incredible fight. So I can't say like I remember how I would have scored that fight, but that first round he definitely wins. And Whitaker, the champ, if that fight even goes a little bit farther as well too, there's more rounds that could maybe look to make the scorecards look a little bit different. But I want to say that somebody had this fight scored like 30-27 for Whitaker, maybe even a couple people, but there was a couple of scores where I was like, oh, okay, that seems a little dramatic. And this fight as well too, I thought had a couple of those. But I thought, Costa, a champion, is he like a champion level talent now at middleweight? And maybe he was that before, but the way with how strong his kick game was in this Whitaker fight, I think it's like, okay, there is a world where I think Costa has the potential to get the belt. It's a stacked class right now. The middleweight division, we can that's obviously we got Leon Edwards, or no, sorry, Leon Edwards is welterweight. Drussis Duplessis, gonna make me stutter over this name, as the middleweight champ. Strickland, Adesanya, Whitaker, 1, 2, 3 for your defender rankings. Then Costa now down to 7. So it's a very, very, very competitive division. Adesanya still trying to look. I think at some point, did he say he was stepping away? I don't necessarily remember, but if he had said that, they wouldn't have number 2 on the rankings. But the Wolf, Hamzat at 11. We know his talent as well too. So stacked division and I think there was a scheduled Hamzat Costa fight as well too. But Costa versus Duplessis, the hottest UFC match ever. Who knows for the belt? I think it could happen at some point. Maybe a Costa Adesanya fight would just break my heart to see those two guys have to one of them, to see one of those guys have to lose would be tough. But shout out to Volk. I know Volk is like instant rematch. We have to go right back, get right back in there. But the thing is, he hasn't just been beat the last 2 fights. He's been knocked out both the last 2 fights. And I think there was, fighters for there was like some stats they were saying them on the broadcast, but fighters for 35 plus, he's now 35. And he's got knocked out. There's been some stuff with his hands the last couple of fights, and he's been leaving his head open. And I mean, he's been getting knocked out. So there's been some holes in his game too, where for such a technical fighter, he's had moments where you're like, okay. And I think if I remember correctly too, on the broadcast, they were, obviously Rogan, and Bisping and Cormier, all of the UFC guys, when they rotate them through, they all do a great job of calling the fights. But they were saying that Volk was going to start opening up a little bit on Volkanovski, or on Topuria. You could kind of see him start to get a little bit more aggressive. And I believe Bisping had just said that, hey, maybe Volk's got to be a little careful. He's going to get caught. And you could see it with his hands, and he's leaving the head out. And then Topuria goes in there and gets, so, he's going to have to, really study the camp. I think, especially after back-to-back knockouts, Volk, take some time and be smart about setting yourself up for that next fight, because I don't know if fighters approach fights this way, but if you're a fighter and you've been knocked out twice, that has to be a factor in your fight camp, I think. Because I mean, I think it's pretty well established at this point that you become more vulnerable to getting knocked out if it's something that has happened in your past. So I think your game plan has to adjust for if we've got the health bar on the video game, you're just starting with a lower health bar, and that has to be an adjustment into your camp and into your process. So I just hope Volk takes all these things, and I just hope that Volk is setting himself up for success with this next fight. Like we said earlier, Topuria is definitely a monster to have to go up against, and he looked fantastic in this last fight. And we mentioned this follower thing on Instagram. I think he's spiked even more after the fight. So, the growth thing for the UFC too, to quickly say on that, like the international thing, I think it is that could be very obviously profitable for the UFC. The UFC is interesting because there's fight commissions and there's different state stuff to work around. I know, within the past decade, all the states have opened up and the rules have become more lax to allowing the MMA stuff in all 50 states. But getting actual UFC matches commissioned and then wanting to have to deal with the committee and getting all the, certain fighters in and certain fighters out, and everybody on the same page. But just the fandom too, where you have fighters that you just have whole countries that could just get behind one guy. I think, the UFC is definitely going to grow. Like I said, I'm going to be curious to see in which areas it grows. Is it going to become the third US sport? Is it going to be this huge international hit? Or is it going to be, and it's already a massive thing too. I was looking at some of obviously the Dana White's always bragging about the social numbers, but the ESPN MMA YouTube channel is followed like way more. It's almost 2 million followers more, or not 2 million total, but then more than the NBA channel and way more than the NFL channels. So, obviously the social stuff has always been good with the fighting leagues, but just in terms of selling a pay-per-view, because that's the thing too. It's the pay-per-view events. You've got to actually get people to, fork over the money to watch all of these high-level fights. And it's going to be interesting to see where this sport goes now that, like we're saying, the generations have officially changed hands. Adesanya is still out there. Volk is still out there. These guys, Usman as well too. I believe his name is still, he's the number one contender right now for the welterweight belt. So these guys are very much still in the mix. But in terms of them all being active champions, all being, we have the belt 1,000+ days, we run the division, nobody else is there. Like we're saying, hey, it's an NBA thing. The league is more talented now too, but the generations are changing over. And when Volk went down and actually lost the belt on Saturday, it was like, okay, it was time. Like we said, he had it up for over 1,000 days. You get the belt that long, you get due. Topuria was more than capable, like more than worthy, more than deserving to go out there and have the type of fight to take the belt from Volkanovski. But shout out to Volk for the run. Hopefully it's not over, but if it is, whatever happens next for Volk, we're fully in support. And if he wants to, call in and tell us what his plans are on the Rem and Sam pod, we wouldn't even put that one on Rem and Sam Plus. We would just throw that out there for free for you guys. So, shout out to our guy Volk. Hopefully he's able to bounce back and be better because of all this. But yeah, incredible dominant from our guy. Incredible dominant from just all, Nunez, Usman, Izzy, all these guys. It was definitely fun to watch them bring the UFC. And I'm saying this too this is like a credit to these guys for propelling the UFC into what it is